I'll quickly hand over the floor to you, please.
Thank you, His Excellency Session Chair. Thank you, Waziri Munya, Co-Chair. Thank you, Chair of the Agriculture Committee, His Excellency Nyoro, Governors, Nyeri, all the Deputy Governors, PSS present, Head of Agencies and Donors, my colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samuel Ogola, the Acting CEO of the Warehouse Receipt System Council. Allow me initially to appreciate the CS, who last week, as one of the activities in the year, launched the Warehouse Receipt System in Kitale, and the session chair, His Excellency Haemba, who also hosted us. We are grateful for that. May I posit that most of the issues raised yesterday, food security, issues of food safety, issues of post-harvest losses, issues of markets, to a large extent have been addressed in the WRS, which I'm going to present to you. The WRS, as you know, is an output of the agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy, is one of the pillars, and we are happy to walk you through. I will first just refresh your minds so that we know what it is, and we have circulated a brochure to all of you, and it's both in digital and hard copy. We have given a copy to the Secretariat in digital, so you will also get it for your own. I don't know how much history you know, but 4,000 years ago, there was a gentleman, Joseph was his name, the first Prime Minister of Egypt. Yes. He was the first warehouse person. Apart from interpreting dreams, he set up the warehouse system in Egypt, and it saved the Egyptians from famine. So warehousing, one is a food security issue, second is a food safety issue, and is also a food trade issue because it promotes trade. Most of the issues raised yesterday, as I've indicated, are going to be covered in this presentation. Just before the CS launched the WRS last week, we did sampling of the maize in Kitale and a bit of it in Nakuru, and you'll be shocked that over 80% of the maize could not qualify for the WRS because it was below the KEB standards. And two reasons came up. One is because when they are shelling, they shell the bad cobs and the good cobs. So the maize that comes up then is not able to meet the standards. And a simple extension service would then be able to sort out that. The second issue is that because of the climate change, it rained when they were harvesting. So there was a lot of drying problems, and we know with the solar drying, that problem can be addressed. But similarly, the potato processors are also complaining that 30% of the potatoes that come to the factories, they reject because our farmers harvest with the hoe, and the hoe then slashes the potatoes, and a lot of the potatoes then don't qualify. So these are problems that are here with us. What is a warehouse receipt system? A warehouse receipt system is a process where commodities are deposited by producers or cooperatives or aggregators in a certified warehouse and are issued with a warehouse receipt as proof of ownership. I just wanted to divide that. On one side, we have the warehouse, which is the farmer-facing side, which supports the farmers in storage, and of course through supplementary extension to the county extension services, the farmers are then able to be assisted with the inputs and post-harvest handling and transport and all those logistics. And then on the other side is the receipt system, where the farmer receives a receipt which can be collateralized, and it can then be negotiable and tradable. And the banks are then able to trade, to finance it, and that flows resources into agriculture. Currently, the agriculture community are getting only 4% of bank lending because of the risk associated with agriculture, but through the warehouse receipt system, the financing to agriculture can be scaled up to 10, 20, 15%, and that can transform agriculture. So it's a very innovative system. Two acts support it, the Warehouse Receipt System Act of 2019 and then the Warehouse Receipt System Regulations 2021. These are available on the website, so I don't need to go into them. Suffice to say that the Warehouse Council is mandated to facilitate the establishment, maintenance, and development of the warehouse receipt system for agriculture commodities produced in Kenya. We have a slight challenge there because this limits us to produce commodities produced in Kenya. So the agriculture commodities that are imported are not within our purview, which means then people can import in commodities and we will not know the quantity and qualities, they are not captured, and it may distort the food price system. The main actors of the warehouse receipt system, the county government, the certifying regulators, if it is potatoes, then the relevant directorate, if it is coffee, the relevant directorate, then the warehouse operators themselves, the depositors, the off-takers, the traders, and the council. We all know that agriculture is devolved, and the Act also takes into that account. So Section 5 of the Act provides very specific functions to be performed by the county. If I may just name a few, one is to establish and maintain a county registry for the receipts, promote development of private and public warehouses, enforce standards prescribed by the council, issue, suspend, revoke, or issue licenses under the Act, inspection of warehouses in the county, develop and implement strategies to facilitate uptake by smallholder farmers. As you know, smallholder farmers form 75% or above of the farming community, so they have a specific role to play. Facilitate access to warehouses by all farmers. Any other function necessary for implementation of the Act. Allow me to focus on this particular area. You will note that a lot of the functions are being given to the counties, specifically through the CECs. Actually, when we went to the State Corporations Advisory Committee for approval of our organization structure, they said you don't need more than 50 people because the bulk of the activities are in the counties. So we'll be appealing to this forum and the governors present that a resolution be made so that the counties then take up and domesticate the WRS Act to the extent that is possible in the various counties. And then we also call on the donor partners present and others to also support the counties through capacity building and training so that they are able to implement this Act, because the bulk of the Act is being implemented by the counties. When the CS was launching the WRS last week, he actually appealed to governors to accelerate this process of domesticating this Act. I'll just walk you through briefly through the certification and the receipt process. The certification first is done by AFA or any other regulatory. Then it comes to the Warehouse Receipt System Council. Then it goes to the county, which issues the license. Then the warehouse operator registers depositors before, so that they are able then to facilitate the depositors in terms of inputs, extension, among other services that were required. Then they take in the deposits, and a receipt is issued, a warehouse receipt is issued to the depositor. Then a copy is sent to the council, and upon verification, the council then certifies and issues a certificate. It is that certificate that now the depositor or the farmer can take to the bank. And for now, we have about 7 banks that are interested and 1 microfinance. The SACCOs are yet to come on board, but we will reach out to them because the farmers are also expressing concerns because they've suffered at the hand of banks. And they're saying, because it's a government program, make sure that you draft an agreement to control the banks so that they don't mess up the farmers. After that, the receipt then is negotiable and tradable. It can be split. You can split it and sell part of your produce and retain part. You can trade it, or you can take it to the bank and get some money. It will be offered for sale through the COMEX or through the warehouse operator or through other means, and the government and other agencies will support the marketing. COMEX is yet to set up, but the warehouses can still sell the receipts under the purview of the council. After that, when the buyer buys, he then goes and collects his goods, and the warehouse receipt is retired. Maybe I just go through the benefits. One is for farmers, reduced post-harvest losses. That's important. And we are saying up to now, in Trans Nzoia, it was going up to 30–40%. Quality storage and aggregation, especially for the smallholder farmers. Price discovery, we have noted that a lot of middlemen and cartels have moved in, and because of the ignorance of the farmer, they take advantage. The WRS will provide a price discovery mechanism so that the farmer knows how much his produce is worth. It will introduce structured markets and affordable financing, and especially for women and youth who constitute about, is it about 70% of the population? I can be corrected, who do not have access to title deeds because our society is patriarchal. The men keep the title deeds. But now with the warehouse receipt, the youth and the women can get access to the receipt, and they are able then to get financing through the receipts. In terms of traders, there is a guaranteed supply, regular supply, and quality and quantity of commodities, which means then agro-processing can take off, because once agro-processing are sure of the quality and quantity given in the warehouses, they can then schedule the manufacturing based on that, and that has a trigger effect in the economy in terms of wealth creation and job creation. There's also access to financing for the traders because they can use the receipts. The depositor can use the receipts, but also the trader can also use the receipt to get financing from banks and finance his activities. In terms of banks, there's reduced risk in agriculture. There's increased business opportunity in a risky sector. They can also monitor through the WRS technology portal. They can monitor where the commodities are and the state of those commodities. I will just briefly update on the status in 2 minutes where we have reached. The council is established. It has 5 members from the private sector and 4 members from the government sector, including Council of Governors, PS Treasury, PS Agriculture, and AFA Director General. And then private sector, the chair is Madam Jane Gige. Previously, she was the CEO of the Kenya Flour Council and is an old hand in agriculture. We have launched the warehouse receipt system. That was done last week by Mheshimiwa Waziri, and that is on at the NCPB. For now, predominantly, the warehouses that are in place are NCPB. 5 have been licensed. There's a total of 60 that have qualified, but they have corrective issues. Many of them have the problem of asbestos, and it's a bit costly to change them. Also, because of previous history, a lot of farmers are saying, we buy into the WRS, but don't take us to an NCPB store. They are looking at the NCPB of 10 years where things were not correct. But now NCPB has reformed. and the services have improved. So we have to tell farmers that things have changed, and that is taking time. In terms of legal framework, I've indicated. In terms of operations, we have leased. Because of the time, short time we have leased WRS from the East African Grain Council for the moment. But we are, through the intervention of Waziri, we are in discussion with the Trademark East Africa to set up a more vibrant system that will cater for all the commodities. We have also established the central registry, and we have been able to issue licenses and receipts. In terms of agriculture value chains, the Council has approved 13 value chains in line with the Presidential Big Four agenda on 100% food and nutrition security and requests from the county government. Among these are maize, pulses, coffee, wheat, rice, potatoes, pyrethrum, cotton, coconut, processed meat, powdered milk, and processed fish. However, in the short term, the Council is focusing on 4. This is maize, this is coffee, potatoes, and cotton. The criteria for choosing a value chain is 1, there must be surplus for trade, and then second, there must be a significant gap between supply and demand price fluctuation. That way then it supports the WRS. In terms of stakeholder outreach, we have gone to 8 county governments and talked to both the governors and the officers and the county commissioners, who also play a critical role. In liaison with the Council of Governors, we have also talked to 3 regional economic blocks. This is the Central Regional Economic Block, the Jumuiya Counties of Pwani, and the Lake Region Economic Block. We have 3 more to talk to, and we hope between now and June that will be done. In total, we have talked to about 30 counties on this process. We have also been sensitized to reach out to the County Assembly Department of Agriculture Committee members so that they are able also to echo as they talk to wananchi. And we are starting with Trans Nzoia and Eldoret, and then Nakuru and Nandi, and then we roll out step by step. In view of the concerns expressed by farmers about dealing with banks, the Council is developing a warehouse receipt financing agreement that will be binding between the banks, the warehouse operators, and the depositors, so that the banks don't shift goals when they have given out their financing. The International Finance Corporation is supporting us and has agreed to train the banks because they have experience from India and other countries. And they have a facility called the Global Warehouse Finance Program, which will be leasing out money to banks, but also is going to support the setup of the warehouses, especially for the cold chains, the potatoes, the fish, the beef, fresh produce. You need cold chains, and we have very few. And even the experience and expertise to run it is not there. So IFC is going to support us, but we are also appealing to the donors present that a lot of potatoes is wasted, a lot of cows die, and yet this is a problem that can be resolved. But also the dry products of maize and pulses and others, a lot of these warehouses are not in good state. There's been a lot of neglect.
Could you finalize, please?
Yes, I've finalized. The last is just to acknowledge support from AGRA and IFC. And the challenges, 1 is lack of adequate warehouse infrastructure and equipment. 2 is slow uptake by private sector, warehouse operators and players. Lack of warehouse receipt financing product by the banks. And then being a young institution, we don't have funds. We have very little funds. We don't have a recurrent budget from Treasury. And we lack support from technical staff, but we are getting this because the budget has, for 2022-23, we have been included, and also the organization structure has been approved. So going forward, you will see a more vibrant council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mpigie makofi tafadhali. This is a new initiative, and I want to ask you, there's these small booklets that they have distributed, each one of you. Please make sure everybody gets this booklet and maybe your presentation also. We'll have a plenary session after we've had a few other presenters, and people should be able to ask some questions or clarifications. We'll move very fast to the next presentation on digital transformation. There's a minor change to the program. The case study from Vihiga is not available, so we'll just ask somebody, Mr. Wilfred Olwoch, to make a presentation on agriculture digitization in Kenya. Mr. Wilfred Olwoch, if you are around. And we are restricting you to 10 minutes. Quickly take up your time.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me begin by acknowledging the presence of the CS, the CASs present, the PSs, the various governors represented differently, the CECs who are here, the heads of development partner organizations, our colleagues from the ministry, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wilfred Olwoch. I'm part of the Agricultural Transformation Office, and my focus there is on digital transformation. So in the next few minutes, I will try and take you through what we're actually doing in that department, because we need everybody to be on board. Before I get started, I wanted to just echo a few comments that came up from yesterday, because then I will truncate the presentation just to focus on the main issues. And I want to start by reminding us what the CS, the Honorable CS said yesterday about affordable inputs, M&D, the need for data, and the corresponding investments in digital initiatives and data collection. For me, if we do not fix the problem of data in the agricultural sector, we cannot fix any other problem. It's that fundamental. And this discussion has been going on through different regimes over a period of time, but I think this is an opportune moment with the convergence of goodwill and technology that we ought to fix this problem once and for all. We also had other sentiments. The Governor Nyoro talked about coordination, enhancing convergence, and reducing divergence. This is a key problem in the ICT sector, primarily because as long as you can get a laptop and you have some basic skills, you can build a solution. And so everybody is building solutions everywhere. And I like to sometimes say that data is everywhere, but not really somewhere. When you want to make a decision, you need quality, timely, well-curated data to do that. And this digitization process is what's going to get us there. So with that, let me kick it off. If you could go to the next slide, please. So my presentation is structured into three. I want to talk about where we are at with STGS Flagship 8, which is the driving mechanism for what we are doing. And then share with you some information that we collected as a team when we decided to eat our own dog food, so to speak, and to assess the situation within the ministry itself in terms of where we are as far as transformation goes and adopting digital technology. Because we really believe that this has to be driven from the center out. If the ministry transforms digitally, everybody else will follow suit. And then I'll quickly mention two areas of work that we are pursuing, which I think are quite important for this endeavor. Next slide, please. So just a quick update on the flagship implementation. Next slide. Again, I don't want to repeat what has been said. We know that the STGS is a 10-year strategy, and within that there are 9 flagships. There's an enabler, which is flagship 8, that covers digital, and there are certain use cases that have been prioritized, digital interventions that have been thought through, as Professor Boga was explaining earlier, And this is the focus that we have in terms of rolling out those priority digital cases and then everything else following suit. So again, let's go to the next slide. In terms of delivery, the Agriculture Transformation Office, sitting where it is and being cross-cutting and working with the different state departments, is the primary delivery mechanism. So along with others in the team we are in, the idea here is to keep track of where all these initiatives are and cross the boundaries between different state departments and make sure that everybody is on board as we move forward. So this is a primary role. This diagram was designed to show how the ATO essentially manages the delivery teams, but this work, of course, is implemented by the mainstream ministry, state departments, and our colleagues out there in the counties. So again, next slide. So this is just a quick tabulation of where we are at. These here are the 7 use cases, and essentially we have either started or are ongoing or in planning stages for the various ones. Remember yesterday it was mentioned that the strategy was launched just 2 years ago, and as soon as we had launched it, we had the COVID pandemic come up, so some momentum was lost there, but work has been going on virtually. And therefore, of the 7, these are the different statuses. Let me just pick one and point it out in terms of targeting farmers with e-incentives. This is going to be one of the key asks I will make of our governors and the collective counties, which is the issue of registering farmers. Registration of farmers and having a comprehensive registry of farmers, which is national, is key to solving everything else. Somebody said in one workshop I was in that it's as if, can you imagine the Kenya Revenue Authority operating without a registry of taxpayers? So for us, it's that fundamental. It's a very basic problem that may not excite very many people, but it's the fundamental problem that we must solve if we are to go to other things. We often talk about things like big data, using satellite imagery, but this is so basic that if we don't solve this one, the other ones will not be solved as well. So we must put our best foot here. And as I close on that one later on, I will come back to that. So generally we have 7 areas we are working in. All of them are moving forward, and the ATO is trying to coordinate and track where we are at on those across the state departments with development partners and others. And I'll tie this into our governance structure that we will be proposing shortly to move this forward. Next slide, please. Some of the ongoing initiatives, they have been mentioned, so I'll not belabor on them. We've got various programs running. The warehouse receipting system has just been presented to you. There's a Kenya Agriculture Market Information System that's currently collecting price data from about 40 or thereabout markets nationwide. We also have the digital food balance sheet that should basically, when fully operational and all the data is coming in as required, should be able to help us make informed decisions about whether we need to import or not, and how much, and whether there are other options. So there's a bunch of initiatives going on. Next slide, please. The big data center at Kaldro was also mentioned yesterday by Waziri. And one of the things we are proposing here is it's actually the agriculture sector big data center, because Kaldro is part of the sector. And we found that when we communicate that it's for the sector, then there's more traction and we have more players who are willing to maximize, use this platform. We've had counties come and say they would want to use some of the compute resources which are there. They're very powerful computers there with a lot of data capability, and the platform is currently not maximized. So this is an opportunity for all of us who need systems to be rolled out. It can be hosted there, and there's a lot of backup support coming from Kaldro itself. Some of the things I'll talk about also include the Kenya Unified Data Platform, which I will mention specifically as I go on. And this is an idea to create a platform that would pull in as much data as we need and allow everybody to access what they require, and I will go in a little bit onto that. So with that, again, because of time, this will be shared out through the Secretariat. Let me ask that we go to the next slide, and I'll pick a few key things to mention. So I want to talk about what we are trying to do to accelerate digital transformation at the ministry. And the reason we have picked the ministry is because as the center of all of these activities, if you transform the center, then those changes cascade outward. And we take the lead and then others will follow. So that's the idea. The transformation process, if you see the little text there, it says systems, processes, workflows, and culture are part of it. You cannot achieve entire digital transformation if you don't go to the level of culture. Was it again, you spoke yesterday about how we operate, everybody doing their own things, and we somehow think things will work. And if we do not collaborate more effectively, both with donors and intergovernment, then we will have a situation that continues to persist, where we have very many systems, but we are always discussing how to unify them. So culture is important. In 2020, the team embarked on an assessment of where we are at as a ministry, and these are the findings. We looked at three big things. Where are we on technology, people, and processes? And this assessment was conducted courtesy of Microsoft, the global IT company that's probably on all your machines right now. They brought in a consultant who engaged with ICT teams from across the state departments and also from other organizations which are affiliated to the ministry. And we established these things, which are not really rocket science, but it's good to have them there. We have challenges in terms of the technology, network. Just having sometimes a Zoom call while you're at Kilimo can be problematic. What can we do about that? Do we have old computers? Again, the issue of data and applications being siloed came up yesterday. This was also re-established. So projects and programs are all doing their own things, working with different partners, but nothing is really coming together the way we'd want to see. We also have the issue of limited resources here with people. So we have few people to do the work, and we also have limited budgets to get some of these things done. If the issue of 10% investment in agriculture generally is already a problem, you can extrapolate that to something which is lower than that, which is data for agriculture. We are facing exactly the same issues. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, data does not manage itself. We have to invest in that. We also have policies that need to be in place. And like I said, the budgets are segmented across state departments, whereas they need to be working better together. Let's go on to the next one. So this is the vision that the team that came from out crafted, becoming a fully data-driven organization. So in terms of decision-making, the ministry making all decisions based on data. Data that tells you should go in this direction and not that direction. And they also identified some strategic pillars from creating infrastructure, the skills, the tools, and what else needs to be done. And that there is actually a detailed report that is available also for those who are interested. So these are the things that were identified as areas of work. If we could go on to the next one. Next slide, please. Yes. So this is the first thing that I want to bring to your attention that is probably new for some members. In order to drive the transformation of the ministry and the sector, a digital transformation roadmap was created which identified these areas. So if you just look at the green top there, we need to integrate data better, like I've mentioned. We need to make sure that you can make decisions based on analytics and reporting that is automated to some extent. You also need to make sure you have the kind of security that governs all of that, so that data is only available based on who needs to see it. And in terms of infrastructure and equipment, we've talked about connectivity and computers.
Could you wind up, please?
Yes, I'm being asked to maybe, if somebody's on Teams, if you could just mute, so that's the cross interference we're getting. So in terms of the Digital Transformation Committee, and I'm winding up, it has certain roles, which is where I'll conclude. If you go to the next slide, please. We are proposing that the team focus on these areas. We have people who will focus on the roadmap. So there'll be a team which will try to harmonize everything that's going on. Another team will focus on monitoring and evaluation tools. And I remember yesterday, Moses from IFAD, you mentioned this, about how important this is. We are then also working on a unified agriculture data platform that will essentially try to pull data from everywhere and have a governance framework on who can access what data. The issue of e-subsidies being unified, so that you have one platform that issues vouchers and allows you to apply those vouchers across.
Oh, there's some interference.
I think
Can
some people
somebody
are-
fix that?
It must be a huge demand for this session. People are tuning in. And the presentation has, I guess that's my cue to wind up. So in short, if I was to wind up and make a specific ask, there's a lot that we could talk about in terms of digital transformation, but there are two key things. If we do not invest in collecting data routinely across the counties in a systematic, continuous way, we will never solve any other problem. At least that's the take of the team. And we want to ask the counties to work with us and across the levels to make sure that we collect data and we invest in collecting the right data in a timely manner that can then inform all the decisions that we need to make down the road. The second thing I want to ask is that with the help of the donor partners and with the leadership of the ministry, we also do want to collapse some of the efforts that are out there in the field. There are very many efforts that we have come across as we're doing our inventory, where development partners and others would go directly to a county or to some sub-county and do some initiative there. And sometimes those initiatives actually cancel out. You have the same people working in the same teams, somebody's going for one meeting and another meeting, and you're talking to the exact same farmer. So we need to make sure we focus on data and we collapse all our efforts into a singular pool and manage that process with the ministry leading. I think I'm almost done, and I don't know if there's any other slide there, but I will want to leave it there. We were going to talk about the two work areas, but I've mentioned them roughly. This issue of making sure we have a data system that's out there collecting data routinely. FAO has recently funded the Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management Information System. We want to work with counties to roll that out for countrywide farmer registration, and then build on top of that a platform that can collect data routinely. That's a fundamental problem, so I want to leave it there, because then anything else that follows is literally unsolvable if you do not have fundamental data issues sorted out. So ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your time. Because we are pressed for time, I'll leave it there. Just remember that without data issues being fixed and without a comprehensive farmer register, we'll keep talking and come back here again and repeat the same stories. Thank you very much for your ears. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilfred, for that presentation. We'll have a chance during the plenary session for you to respond to a few concerns. We'll move on to do a slight change again in the program. We'll move on to the food systems coalitions, and I'll invite Mr. and Miss Williams from FAO, Deputy Representative, to make a quick presentation of 10 minutes, if possible.
Thank you, Bwana Waziri. Thank you, Bwana Waziri. Our specific ask is we would like to propose that in this meeting that the esteemed governors and the teams who are here put in a resolution to scale up the existing digital and data technologies which are available to make sure that routine data collection and the relevant analysis that provides for data-driven decision-making is put in place. So we are asking that a resolution on scaling up the digital technologies, specifically on farmer registration and routine data collection, are adopted by this council. Thank you.
I think that's a better conclusion now.
Thank you. Thank you.
I suppose that will be granted. The floor is with Mr. Misi.
Yeah, I'm already here, and don't worry, you won't remind me to finish. I'll be within 10 minutes, actually. So for this particular presentation, Waziri and all the protocols observed, I want to state that it is a unique and innovative venture that we just want to share information, and especially that Kenya has become a member. So I want to show you what FAO is doing at the global level to be able to try and prevent health and food crisis. Actually, the point there is we're trying to prevent health crisis from becoming a food crisis. So it was from that background that FAO came in to form what we are calling the Food Coalition. This is because of what COVID-19 has done in terms of disruption of food systems and food security and nutrition. The disruption has been in the area of food production, health of farmers, access to inputs, food losses that have also actually disrupted, including market and market trends. So we all agree as a UN family that is actually trying to implement or support countries in implementing Agenda 2030, that really COVID-19 has deteriorated the progress that we were making towards achieving the Agenda 2030. And you know, we have only about 8 years to go. Next, please. So because of that, we're looking that we have a coordinated, collective, and a global action that is able to bring players together so that the health crisis, which is the COVID-19, does not actually metamorphose into a food crisis. So that is what a food coalition is. It is a voluntary, a multi-stakeholder global alliance. It was actually started by the government of Italy, but as you know, FAO and the Rome-based agencies, the three of them, work very closely. FAO actually took lead so that it could be given the global nature and the global approach. And that is why FAO called on the countries to join. And we are glad to say that Kenya government, working closely with the FAO Kenya, joined the coalition on 5th November 2020. Waziri and colleagues here is that this went officially through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We had discussions with them, and the government made a very informed decision to be part of the coalition. Please move. Yeah, so what is the purpose of the coalition? What does it help on? There are issues of financial resources, also getting a lot of innovations and technical expertise that members will be able to plug in there, and also members will be able to draw from that particular pot. It also promotes advocacy initiatives. Can you move next? There. So the members of Food Coalition are encouraged, one, when you become a member, support the alliance with what we call voluntary contributions. There are those members like big countries, those that have deep pockets, they'll be able to put in something there. And then also you could also contribute in terms of proposals that would be able to mitigate the vagaries of COVID-19, and also provide ideas and expertise, contribution, papers, proposals. These are also part of what goes into the coalition pot. Move next. So the membership, and this is the slide that really I wanted to focus on a little, because you may think that the membership must just be government. No, the membership can be national government, that's true, but we also have international organizations. So some of us here are members of international organizations. You could be members of the coalition. Civil society organizations, even those in Kenya, now that Kenya officially joined the coalition, can as well be members. Academia, including the universities, they can be members, and private sector entities. So why this is important to me is to create awareness that we shouldn't think like that was really just a government membership. No, these all are members that can be in the coalition. The coalition has created a web-based hub, and in the hub there you find the information, you get the expertise papers, which you can tap into, but only when you are the member. Move next. The efforts there that are coordinated for the coalition, transforming agri-food systems, improving our nutrition. So these are some of those that you benefit on and from if you are a member of the coalition. We're looking into raising the standards of living, especially in the rural areas, and address, that is the most important, disruptions that the pandemic has really caused. And we can all attest to the fact that this pandemic has caused a lot of disruptions on the youths, the vulnerable groups, women, and indigenous people. So how do we address that? This you find in the coalition. Please, next. The impacts that this coalition will have and how will that be if you were at the global level to mobilize resources adequately, if you are at the global level, bring up all the expert opinion and papers and proposals, and if you are at the global level, be able to bring people together in a family where those who don't have can pick and those who have can also contribute, then this is the impact that you have to be able to address the vagaries of COVID-19. So it will be serving as a high-level advocate for transforming our fragile agri-food systems around the world. It's just the power of coming together. This is what the coalition is doing. Move next. Yeah, so the obligations here as our FAO country office, we wanted to share with you, just in case you're interested to carry forward this conversation. We will be able to provide you with information, and also we will continue raising awareness like we are doing now here. We're also able to, and we do update the country information sets which are within the hub there, and we also support the local members. So long as you are interested, please come to us. You will get all the information, then you'll be part. You can even come as a State Department, come as a private sector, like we said out before. And then we are also carrying out food coalition intervention activities also at the national level, and also now drilling down to the county level. Please move next, and I think that is it for now. I hope I did within your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for the quick presentation. Makofi kwake. I will move on. Of course, you'll have time as a panelist. You'll answer some questions too. But also, the CS, I want to propose some of these presentations from international organizations, if they can also be put in a format where they can be formally communicated to the counties. Like he has some proposals where I think we can formally do that. We'll move on to the next one, perspectives from the regional blocks on food systems dialogues. We have Mr. Emmanuel Nzai, Chief Executive Officer, Jumuiya ya County ya Pwani. Mr. Emmanuel. And I believe we still have a bit of time. Just a moment, I consult.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Just a moment. Private sector, prepare yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning. It's still good morning. My name is Emmanuel Nzai. I'm the CEO of the Regional Economic Bloc, Jumuiya ya County za Pwani, and on behalf of the Jumuiya ya County za Pwani, welcome to Mombasa. And also on behalf of the other economic blocs, some of the CEOs, I think some of them are online, some of them are probably represented here by the county governments. We really appreciate this opportunity, and especially last year. I think FAO and the ministry in the organization with the UN, UN Food Systems Dialogue, we were able to participate as an economic bloc. So the whole country was basically clustered in the 47 counties around the economic blocks. Jumuiya is one of them, representing the 6 coastal counties. There's the Lake Region Economic Bloc, there's the North Rift Economic Bloc, there is the Southeastern Kenya Economic Bloc, there is the Kajiado and Narok Economic Bloc. There is a good 8 of us. Now, these are new institutions by all accounts, all of them constructed within the mandates, the devolved mandates of the counties, agriculture being one of them. And essentially, all of us have different probably approaches, but I could say all of us have just a common service provision mandates, which are 4. coordinating the regional counties within that in terms of economic development, economic harmonization, undertaking programs and projects which are basically within the cross-cutting resources that they have. Secondly, harmonization of policies. Each of these county governments has county integrated development plans, the 5-year plans, which basically talks to the medium-term plan of the Vision 2030 at the national level. There is the sector plans, which need to be able to talk to the county plans. Counties need to create the 10-year sector plans, which most of them probably have not been created. There's the national spatial plan and the county spatial plans, which some of them have not been done. So that's the policy framework and implementation framework which is in there. So that's policy harmonization. The third one is promotion, promotion of the regional assets. And for our case, that is promotion in terms of investments across the select sectors. And then secondly, in terms of investments. The last one of it is a conversation which has been happening here. Across all this conversation, there is always the private sector participation, which is investments. Instruments around that and framework where some of these projects are cross-cutting between 2 counties or 3 counties. And even if it's in one county, like say, cashew nut manufacturing plant, in Kwale, it would need resources across the other counties. So the whole of that play around that is the whole investment rim. So those are the 4 mandates. And coming into this conversation, I think the perspective we drew from the food systems dialogue, from Kenya here all the way to Rome, was that it will work best if it is probably coordinated at a regional level. And I think these programs and I think this SDGs, there has been movement towards that. So the economic blocks, I think, have been very catalytic, at least at convening the counties in one region where they have the same people, they have the same challenges, they have the same natural resources. And in our case here, I mean, we've had the Galana-Kulali conversation, which is between Kilifi County and Tana River. Much of the vast land that we have where it's rich and fertile and available for agriculture is in Kilifi, in Tana River, and Lamu on the other side is Kwale and Taita Taveta. So the whole of that cluster is one which simply needs to be organized, and each county needs to be talking to one another. So the idea, I think, in our conversation, and especially now, through the last year of the UN Food Systems Dialogue to where we are, we got to resolve a lot of things that I think need to be embedded or incorporated in the policy framework, which currently counties are in the process of doing. They've done their midterm review of the CIDPs, but there is an important process which will begin of the end-term review and the drafts for the new CIDPs. And that's the case for the medium-term plan of the Vision 2030. I think whatever we have collected, there needs to be a very deliberate approach for us to be able to enable the counties at the regional level where some of these things may be embedded so that we align the county budgets towards this 10% that we're talking about. I think secondly from there, and I will be looking forward to hear from the private sector, is for us to also pull out the investment projects or investor-ready or bankable projects around this, which can be packaged for them to be able to attract investors. And I think this is more so now, especially with the COVID situation, which in our case, it disrupted us. It disrupted 2 critical sectors for us, the tourism sector and of course the agriculture sector. But we're seeing quite some opportunities around that. So I think it would be important probably if we could go, especially this year for our country, it's an election year, but it's also a very, very important year in the policy making framework of our country. So it's an opportunity, I think, for us to basically be able to strengthen that process and be able to move towards a conversation where both the national government budgets and the county government, but clustered, are all talking. And then last one, I think amongst those is this dialogue and collaboration, which I think had been talked about. I think this meeting is about enhancing collaboration. And I think at this point, given the county mandates of agriculture, there has always been push and shove between who has which mandate between the national government and the county government, and the result of it sometimes it confuses development partners and even investors who are coming in. So I think the regional economic blocks get to provide a platform where all the county executives in charge of agriculture, livestock and fisheries can come together, a program-based project, which they take a look, they share, they look at the status of it, they learn lessons, and they'll be able to measure. I think the national government and development partners probably need to really focus on that, where quarterly there is conversation around this. Of course, there is the JASCOM, but I think the view always JASCOM is more county-specific and within the county systems. But I think at that regional level, we may be able to strengthen that. For our case, we call it the Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries Sector Working Group, or Jumuiya Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries Sector Working Group. And we've been able to work with FAO around that, and we think if we structure it alongside the JASCOM and this regional platform that we're talking about, then we can do well. I will stop there for now. I thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Makofi kwake. That's what regional blocks are doing. I think we'll give the private sector also time. They'll tell us about acceleration of private sector investments in agriculture. I have, I think, Agatha Dhuo. Can you take the floor, please?
Thank you. My name is Agatha Dhuo, representing Ms. Karo Kariuki, who is the CEO KEPSA, and I'm the GM of the Agriculture Private Agriculture Sector Network. So I'll be very, very brief in the interest of time, all protocol observed, and I want to speak about accelerating investments in the agriculture sector. So you kindly take me through. I don't want to take you through the entire structure. Just go on. I want to focus on only what are the key issues. This is the organizational structure. The KEPSA, and KEPSA is the umbrella body of the private sector in Kenya, and you can see all the membership. I think you can move, since I don't have the pointer, you can do it for me. These are the institutional PPD systems through which we deliver our mandate as the voice of the private sector in Kenya. I mentioned yesterday in my in the opening remarks that the relationship between KEPSA and ASNET, and ASNET is actually the agriculture sector board at KEPSA. So we'll just move on. I think I'll share the presentation so that you can get the details because of time. This is a KEPSA strategic focus areas. We shall share the presentation so that you can also go through it. Let's move on. I want to go to the key slides. The KEPSA strategic focus areas was the goal of emerging economically stronger together from the COVID pandemic. We have key issues that we focus on, one of which is the public-private dialogue pillar, the ease of doing business, global competitiveness in a public-private dialogue pillar. And then we have a sustainability pillar, the governance pillar, the business hub pillar, and the social pillar, under which we are doing various issues. Let's move to the next slide. So this is now the Agriculture Sector Board at KEPSA, which is the Agriculture Sector Network, specifically formed so that we can expand the mandate of what was formerly being done and achieved at the Agriculture Sector Board. We are now covering more objectives, one of which is to enhance sector-wide coordination of the often fragmented private sector. I mentioned yesterday that I have worked in the public sector for a long time, and I can assure you one of the biggest challenges was to bring the private sector actors together. And then lead in policy, advocacy for competitive and enabling business environment, which was also happening before. But very, very important also capacity building of associations and business member organizations. I think this is very important because we have so many business member of organizations now, but they need continuous capacity building for us to be able to engage effectively with the markets, both locally, internationally, and with the other BMOs as well, the government and the county government. So that is one of the responsibilities that we have taken as ASNET. And then, of course, forge greater collaboration and partnerships with the national and the county governments. And I have mentioned that yesterday, part of our team at ASNET was actually in Kisii. And I mentioned, we had an engagement with the governor because we want to start working on anchoring counties, ASNET within the counties, which is very important, that the private sector actors in the counties can also work together with the county governments and, of course, partner with the government to fast-track implementation of sector flagships, which is really coming out here, the need for forging strong partnerships going forward and support the generation and maintenance of relevant research. This has been mentioned, and I want to say that ASNET is actually working towards, we have a committee. Unfortunately, I don't have time to talk about our organizational structure at ASNET, but we have a committee that is responsible for research and innovation, and we are working towards having a private sector-led research in the agriculture sector so that we can have real-time and accurate data for purposes of informing investments in the agriculture sector. Next, please. Next. So I'll talk about the unbundling the slack and challenges facing the private sector. I think this is the core issue and some of the challenges that we are experiencing as private sector in our effort and strive to mainstream investments. One of which is the Byzantine requirements for starting an agribusiness. The procedures have reduced from 10 to 7, which is very, very good. Just before I came here, we had a meeting with one of our BMOs, the Avocado Society of Kenya, and some of these issues are really coming up from micro and medium investors that are interested in carrying out business. Procedures have reduced from 10 to 7, and the time for starting business is from 32 to 23 days, and the cost has also reduced. But I think it is important that we also compare it with what is happening within the region, because we are signatories to the common market protocols within the COMESA region, so that we play the game as members that are trading and doing business with each other within the region. And then the imposition of VAT on the agriculture inputs, which is consequently increasing the cost of production. I think there is really need to look at this because the cost of doing business at farm level, and we are discussing, we spent the last 2 days discussing food security issues. The cost of production has really gone up, and there is need for us to sit together and look at how we can bring down some of the costs. The policy and the regulatory overreaches, overlaps, and inefficiencies, and unclear functional delineation between the two levels of government. I think this has also been there, and it's affecting work, especially when we are looking at issues of cess, who should be addressed, and then the limited incentives of private agriculture financing and fintech. As a consequence of this, only 4% of commercial lending is dedicated for agriculture, despite the sector being the biggest GDP contributor. I think this is a very important issue because even at farm level, smallholder farmers need access to finance, but the cost of accessing finance is still, unfortunately, very high. Then there is multiplicity and duplicity of charges, cess and levies charged by counties still remains a primary concern. We have been addressing this issue for a time now, and I think it's still an issue of concern. Our BMOs have expressed this as a serious concern as they discharge businesses from county to county and from county from county to county. Then delayed payment of suppliers by the government. For example, delayed payment of bills owed to millers, drying liquidity in the market and plunging the businesses into further debts. This we have also been raising for some time, that the government owes the private sector payments that need to be paid so that the private sector can have resources again for investment. Then non-compliance to SPS and trade standards, inadequate aflatoxin surveillance, poor quality potatoes, high maximum residue levels in the produce. At the beginning, last year we had the issues of maize, and this is a request that we have made, that the private sector could also be allowed to learn aflatoxin testing. And then non-adherence to the CARDIP threshold, inadequate public funding for agriculture, lending to undue fiscal pressures on the private sector investment in the horticulture industry. This is again an issue that we have been raising of horticulture industry cess that is hurting particularly the export market, among others, and lack of elaborate public-private partnership modalities for agriculture investments. This issue was raised by the peers yesterday, that the private sector, yes, would like to work with the government, and we really are looking forward to a framework that can allow private sector entry into agricultural investments, including access to land for farming. And I'm very glad that we came up with a framework. The other day we were discussing a framework for this kind of engagement with the private sector. So I'll briefly go through enablers for enhancing private sector investments in the agriculture sector. Kindly go to the next. These are some of our recommendations. To zero rate all agricultural inputs to reduce the cost of agricultural production on the global competitive index. And this will address the distortive effects of taxes on competition and improve our ranking on the product market pillar, where Kenya is currently ranked at position 88. Zero rate all our agricultural inputs. I think this is very, very important. We do need to look at it as a private sector, as public sector, and see how we can actually make our investments competitive globally. The other one is rationalize the multiple and double taxation regime to remove undue fiscal pressure on the private sector. I'll go through them, and like I have said, I'll share the presentation for record purposes. And there is need also to establish a mechanism or a model bylaws to ring-fence national county allocations for high potential sectors, for example, extension and input subsidies to support farm level production. We have been talking about the investments that are going to the agriculture sector in the counties, and I think it's important that particularly the investments going to the agriculture sector are ring-fenced so that the county governments can allocate sufficiently and protect the investments that are going to that particular sector. Then establish the challenge of unclear functional delineations between the national and county governments through full implementation of the Transition Authority report and other relevant statutes to enhance efficiency. The defunct Transition Authority did a lot of good work. I hope you have access to the document. They did a very good work to actually unbundle the different the functions between the national and the county governments, and it's important that we stick to that so that the counties can do what they need to do, and the private sector can also know where to go when there is a challenge. So let's delineate, and this again was mentioned by the governors present in their presentations yesterday. Then develop a transition plan for chemical pesticides to organic pesticides to enhance marketability of Kenyan exports and reduce health impacts on Kenyans. Being in the agriculture sector, I'm not saying that this is something that will happen overnight. We still need the chemical pesticides, but gradually we can move towards chemical organic pesticides because that is what the market is currently asking. Most of the markets are currently asking for. So let's see how we can have a framework and engage on moving away from chemical pesticides to organic pesticides. Then allow importation of GM animal feeds for raw materials under the duty remission scheme to safeguard the livestock industry, which faces an existential risk due to high cost of feeds. I want to thank the CS because we have had a very healthy engagement on the reduction, on a framework for reduction of animal feeds in the country. We have taken the immediate measures, but we need to move to the medium and the long-term plans. And our recommendation as private sector, and I'm very happy that the PS who sat with us for nearly 2 weeks coming up with an engagement framework. We agreed together with the Biosafety Authority that there's really nothing wrong with the GMs. In any case, our neighboring countries, and we are trading with them, including consuming their milk and their products, are working with the GM, so working with the GM products. So I think, like was mentioned yesterday, this is something that we need to do concertedly as private sector, as public sector, and also the development partners present. Let us work together to bring down the cost by incorporating the GMs, because in any case, it's also happening in other areas. Accredit private sector labs, I mentioned this, to undertake aflatoxin testing. I think this is very important so that we accelerate access to markets and movement of goods, especially at bolder points. Support stronger farmer organizations to ensure integration of smallholder farmers and transition to commercially oriented farming. Again, this has been a subject of discussion today, but it is a strong recommendation from the private sector. Incentivize investments in the agriculture and leasing of public-owned state land. I know there is a lot of conversation that is going on around this area, but let's move on. Even if it's difficult, let's push it until the private sector is able to access the land, because there is a lot to do, including what we discussed, that we have an opportunity to grow our own raw material for animal feeds through some of the land that is available in this country. Then fully implement the CADIP Malabo Declaration in policy and practice. Again, there is goodwill in this area. It has been mentioned here, but let's really see to it that the counties actually support the 10% and beyond allocation to the agriculture sector. Then establish structured commodities trading to incentivize private sector participation and minimize inefficiencies, particularly in the staples. And I'm very happy, I really want to congratulate the CS on the launch of the warehouse receipt system. But let's move on to other commodities as well.
Maybe you can wind up. You have very good recommendations. Can you speed up?
Thank you very much. Let me finish with the last one. I think the best is that I share. For the others, I can share the presentation, then some of the issues can be captured. So we have our 8-point ask, but because the ask is related to what I have already discussed, I think these are the 8-point asks. There is need to rationalize duplicity of taxes. I've also talked about CADIP and its author, so I really want to maybe on behalf of the private sector, I really want to thank you for providing time for the private sector to give their views in this very important forum, the InterGovernmental Forum. And we are committed as private sector to partnerships, and we look forward to working together, strengthening partnership and collaboration so that we can achieve our goals and objectives as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agatha. Makofi for Agatha. I think it's a very great step that you've made, Bwana CS, to incorporate the private sector in our deliberations. You can see the way they have very good recommendations, which I believe we have taken on board on an ongoing conversation with them. Can I ask the panelists? I think there are 5 and we have 4 seats there. Somebody can put there an extra seat. 15 minutes out there so that a few of the concerns and questions could be answered. Can I have an extra seat there? Please, the panelists or the speakers. Let's move quickly. We need to wind up. We are out of time. Wanogola, where are you? Is it all watch? Yeah. Williams, where are you? And Emmanuel? If we can hasten our steps. As they settle in, if you have a burning issue, burning question, burning comment, we can allow you to interact with our speakers. Can I look at the front bench here? Do you have any concerns, Mary Nzomo? And then we'll follow with the CS.
Mine are 2 observations, one for WRS and the other one for the digital transformation. And I want to thank the CS once again for launching the WRS in Trans Nzoia County, and I'm happy the CEO is here. Currently, what is happening is that all the approved warehouses are NCPB owned, and I believe that private sector has not participated fully in the warehouse receipt system, because even the structures that they have, once they're inspected by AFA and the Warehouse Receipt Council, they don't meet the requirements for food safety. So it's an appeal, maybe to the CEO, as you build the capacity of county assemblies on agriculture, there is need to bring on board the private sector, people who are owning warehouses, because we're having very many aggregators within the counties, so that they can also be capacity build, sensitized on food safety issues, and what they need to do to the existing warehouses so that we can have wider participation. This will enable even our farmers. We'll be able also to decentralize the issue of now the farmers accessing those facilities by NCPB. Because a place like Trans Nzoia, we only have one NCPB, and it becomes very difficult for the farmers to transport their maize from wherever they're coming from. I think the CEO is aware of that. Coming to the digital transformation, we've been struggling as counties to put up statistics units for the purpose of harmonizing data, and we've been working very closely with the ministry on this, and there has been need now to harmonize the data sources. There's too many data sources, donor funded and others. So the first task is to harmonize the data sources, help us strengthen the statistics unit at the county level by having critical staff who are statisticians, and at the same time providing the basic equipment, critical equipment, basic equipment for us to be able to move forward. Otherwise, those are the 2 recommendations I wanted to make. And of course, the role of the private sector cannot be overemphasized. I'm happy that they have brought out most of the issues that even my governor had brought out. Thank you.
Bwana CS, you have the floor. Microphone. Somebody should be around with a microphone.
The governor should not be the one giving the microphone. I want to thank the presenters for very good presentations. But my point is just a follow-up on the digital transformation presentation, which was also very good. I want to thank the team that has been working on it and the progress made so far. But we want to see how we can accelerate the work and be able to move faster in terms of implementation of the very clear recommendations that you have made. And I would suggest that since you already recommended that resolution that we need to make, and I want to agree with that, with it, I would want to suggest, because I'm finding part of the problem is personnel and budget, I would imagine. So we need the departments to meet to suggest on where we'll get the money. Because we've been saying this is a flagship, we want to move it forward, but we have been very slow in the implementation. And it's very clear that the agricultural transformation will not happen if there is no digital transformation. So we need to prioritize our budgetary allocations to direct money to this. So we need a meeting between the departments, find out where to get the money, and get also the agencies on board, because I can even see agencies advertising services that would be better utilized if there was a plan that is being implemented centrally. Not everyone doing their small things, everybody doing their small things, there is no connectivity. So we need to really move in that direction. And then after that, we also move to meet with the counties, so that you also set up your teams that you work with to be able to accelerate this work. And if we don't have the resources to do everything, at least we can scale up the KIAMIS farmer registration, because that is the basic. We have the basic data, then we can, upscale as we move forward. So we really have to work out. They have done a great job, but I think part of the problem is the coordination element that is lacking, that we need to work on. Chair, Co-Chair, if you agree with me.
Thank you, CS, for a very clear way forward on digitization. Can I have the governor, the chair of the agriculture sector?
Thank you very much.
Move to the CS.
Thank you very much. I want to agree with the CS, because sometimes we ask ourselves, why should we have a meeting in Mombasa and come up with statements like who needs? The meeting of this kind of meeting should be able to come up with concrete recommendations on how to go forward. I think time and time again, we have talked about data. Everybody talks about it, but we hear very less about what we are going to do it. And even digitalization, the transformation. You cannot digitalize if you don't know, if you don't have what you are digitalizing. You have to digitize data. And this is an area where I agree entirely. In fact, I would go one step further and say that we need to set up either a committee or a task force or whatever it is, and identify maybe a consultant, so that we can look at the data and data requirement and what kind of data we need. And over and above that, go ahead and say who is going to collect that data at the county level, so that we agree with governors that they have to set up a data unit. That data unit should have staff that have been trained on certain. We don't have to start with all the data, but we can start with a few data which they collect, they collate, and then they transmit. Where do they transmit it to? Who receives that data? who actually screens or collates or whatever that data before it is moved to the next level. If there is something that we can do in this meeting is to set up a system that within the next 6 months we have set up a data collection. First of all, you know what you need, then you know who collects it, you know who it is delivered to, you know how it is delivered, and eventually, now we can talk about digitalization. As we are doing that, we can talk about it. We will still continue with digitalization because we have e-extension, we have e-voucher, all that will come. But my worry at this point is, and e-voucher is going on and is good. We need registration of farmers. And I know that is something that has been going on. But let me tell you, there is no incentive of any governor right now over the next 7 months to spend a single shilling in registering farmers. Okay? As a governor who is looking for the election, I'm going to buy fertilizer to distribute and seed. I want to be very practical to you. So we also have to look at those kind of public good kind of things that do not attract particular incentives and say, what system do we put in place so that we can enhance registration of farmers? And this is where sometimes I also challenge our development partners, because we also can come up with our own requirement and requests and ask for funding. It may not fall within your strategic framework, but I know FAO has been spearheading that. But what we are saying is, can we look at resources that can help registering of farmers so that we say, as a country, over the next 12 months, all the counties will be registering their farmers. This is the mode in which they are going to do it. We have to have a uniform mode. This is the, the platform. Are we going to have tablets? Are we going to have what? Those are the kind of things that we should be able to come up with so that we have data, we have our farmers registered so that, if you have to send a message, you are sending it to this farmer. Those are practical things that I think can come out of this meeting. If we see there is financial need for us to make a concept and request for that support, then let's do it. Let's say we require 100 million to do the data requirement, as I've said, and put up a mechanism to do whatever, or we require 200 million, we don't have it, and we are requesting for some support from development partners to do A, B, C, D. So we are not coming to tell you to go to Vihiga and collect this data. So if you collect the data in Vihiga, what happens in Kakamega? So those are the kind of things that I would say. So that, so we have a system, and we have a very unified system that the data collected in Ramu is more or less the same data. It may concentrate more on livestock, but the livestock data collected in Ramu is the same data that is collected in Kajiado, and is the same data collected in Narok. That I think, and I agree entirely, that we need to set up that framework. We need to sit together with the ministry and us as the Council of Governors, and we look at those requirements and we implement it. I also want to say something about, so I've talked about the need for data and so on. I'm very happy to hear the warehousing receipt is now rolled out. Over the last 20 years, I remember I think about 20 years ago, we went to Uganda, to Tanzania, to see warehousing receipt that they had set up on cotton and coffee. And we came back here and we talked about it and nothing happened. We indeed had a warehousing receipt system, if you can remember. Those of you who know about the coffee warrants, the coffee warrants were a form of warehousing receipt system. Because all you could do is to put your coffee in a store, and then coffee board would make sure that that coffee is in the store, and because it was in the store, you would be issued with a coffee receipt, coffee warrant. And those coffee warrants now were, you could trade, you could go to the bank, and the bank would give you working capital based on the warrant, but they were misused because they were not legal tender, there was no, whatever. So I'm very, very happy that we have a warehousing receipt system. Do not worry about NCPB stores that are archaic. Do not worry about the asbestos roofs. if you have a good working warehousing system, you are going to see the private sector respond by putting up the warehouses, and all you need to do is to license them and make sure that they are issuing, warehousing receipts that cannot be, counterfeited. My problem is this, Waziri. A warehousing receipt system works on the basis of a policy that ensures that there is an interseasonal price rise. If you harvest in January, you put it in the warehouse, you know very well that it is going to dry. You are going to incur the warehousing storage costs, personnel costs. You are going to incur those costs. For you to be able to have a higher price than the cost you have incurred, you expect that the price will rise, so that by April, if you put it at 2,000, it will be 2,500. That's what we call intra-season price rise. The problem is this: as it is rising, in April, some people import maize. Then what happens? The price comes to 1,800. So you have put in your money into the warehouse at 2,000 shillings, expecting that because of the interseasonal price rise, compared to the cost of the storage, it will be at 2,500. But some people have imported maize through Panya route or some Paka routes. And now it comes back to 1,800. You have collapsed the warehousing receipting system. People have lost money. The bank will have lost their money. And that is where I'm saying we cannot do these things the same way and expect different results. So we have to have a policy, very clear policy. For the commodities that we are warehousing, the policy on importation and the cartels that we are talking about must be dealt with, so that you do not interfere with inter-seasonal price rise, as I've talked about, and then people lose their money.
Governor, we are running out of time.
Okay.
I know you have got very useful.
No, but I just want to say.
Very, very useful.
I just want to say that there are very, very good incentives that the things that we are coming up with, Your Excellency. But even when we come to a meeting like this and we talk to ourselves and we have a good coffee and then we say Kwaheri, we go to the airport and go back to Nairobi, we could have as well stayed in Nairobi. This meeting, and that's why we are waiting for these resolutions, this meeting should be able to come up with concrete things that are implementable. We may not be the ones to implement, but there must be somebody who will implement it. Okay, I rest my case, but I have made it very clear the issue of data. I think we can no longer continue to talk about it without putting in concrete steps. Thank you.
We're getting extremely useful comments. I hope when Wilfred on digitization and on warehouse systems, you are taking serious note. And we are saying, I think what you've ended up with is more important than maybe even your response. Can we have recommendations that can be taken forward from here? I think that will be more useful. Yes, over there. I'll come back to the rest of the floor.
I think my issues have already been raised by the two chairs, just to emphasize that the transformation office or the digitization office, we need the private sector to really support this office and work very closely, so that that long list of yours that you wanted sorted out, probably some of these, the approach can now help to sort it out once and for all. Thank you very much.
Let me open the discussion to the rest of the floor. Can I see any other participants? If not, do I see a hand? Is it FAO, my colleague here? Microphone over there, please. Then followed by, Yeah.
Thank you very much on the presentation, and can agree more with my the co-chairs on their sentiment in terms of the direction we move. So here, as I mentioned yesterday, this is a defining moment, and definitely the decision we take here set the pace for how we enroll here. So I fully agree that we need concrete, and to me, the sentiment I also got from my members is that this has been a rich event with a lot of content. So we should not lose that content. The question is how do we capture those content into more actionable, time-based and clearly responsible framework moving forward, so that we can track and make sure that those are implementable within the short time, and then the medium time, and also the long term. So as donors, we want to reiterate our support that we know the implication of also resource mobilization, and that's why we are part of this conversation. So once we have that concrete outline, I think we will continue to mobilize and leverage on our resources and be able to support the government moving forward, irrespective of the new administration that comes forward. We ensure that continuity for us is extremely important to transform Kenya agricultural sector. So we look forward to the concrete actions, and we have also made some recommendations and shared yesterday and today. We think these are also a guiding way to support the process moving forward. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much for concurring with the views that we have on actionable recommendation. You brought in a very useful angle that you're going to engage and see how you can help with resourcing some of these actions. Thank you very much for that. Next.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to mention something on the warehouse receipt system, especially on the rollout. Conscious that the Council of Governors also sits on the board, but aware that if you look at it, the policy issue is there, but the uptake in terms of the interventions with the farmers, crop production, marketing, internal trade, are basically devolved functions. And that is where we are intervening as the nation. So the CECs and the county governments and the role that they must play must be really defined within the rollout of the warehouse receipting system, so that we don't dilute the functions of the county governments, duplicate the functions, start rolling out warehouse receipt system officers into the county governments, when essentially the county government is responsible for the entire production and internal trade mechanism. So I really want to listen into how the county governments, the agriculture departments, the trade departments are being involved to take up that warehouse receipt system to implement it. I thank you.
Let me have one more intervention, then we conclude the session. We get responses. In the absence of that, most of the issues are recommendations. But could we have a response on one or two issues? Warehousing, their concerns, digitization, their concerns. Tell us how we move forward. Wanogola.
Thank you, Session Chair, and for the questions that have come on board. The first one was involvement of the private sector and other players in the warehouse receipt system, and not only NCPB. When we started out, we rolled out quickly, and NCPB was a low-hanging fruit. And through that intervention, they've brought on board about 60 warehouses spread throughout the country. Secondly is that in partnership with KSEP, Kenya Cereal Enhancement Program, We have identified 15 warehouses belonging to communities that we are also working to onboard the WRS. Third is that the ministry has directed or required the NCPB to lease out to the private sector 7 million 90 kilogram space in the warehouses, so that these warehouses are leased out to the private sector. So already the private sector can come on board through that route. As we speak, we already have 2 private sector warehouses that have applied, one in Nakuru, one in Nairobi, and we are processing. For the one in Nairobi, the issue that I addressed during the presentation, they have a lot of cereals they are bringing in from out, and our law only limits us to commodities produced in Kenya. So we are still discussing with the ministry how to be guided on that. But other crops, potatoes, they have, I think, 8 cold chains, cold storage facilities that we are going to look into. Coffee, we have about 3 warehouses that have come up. Rice, we have about 5 warehouses belonging to others are government, others are private sector, and cotton also have. So we are rolling out to this. But like I requested, the Act specifically empowers the CECs to implement. There are specific requirements. In fact, the majority of the implementation is the CECs. So we are requesting the CECs then to take the lead, mobilize the warehouses in your county, and then we'll partner with you so that we are able to sensitize and train them so that they can then apply and start rolling out. The one raised by His Excellency Governor Nyoro about the interseasonal fluctuation, this is one of the criteria that we are using, because there must be a price fluctuation to justify the temporary storage under the warehouse receipt. Where we have cases of importation, we will sensitize the ministry so that we are guided, so that those fluctuations are managed. But the end game is that all the food in the country will be under the food balance committee, so that it's recorded, so that the government is advised when there's a shortage or when there's need to not to import. So there is the transparency in these records that will then lead to government allowing the importations. In terms of rolling out quickly, we are using the regional economic blocks to quickly talk to the CECs, both the CEC agriculture, cooperatives, and trade, so that they're involved. And then we are also talking to the governors of the respective counties when we visit, and the county commissioners, and the CEC and the staff. And now we have added the MCAs in the Committee for Agriculture, so that the information filters, and then we are able then to quickly roll out. Thank you very much.
On digitization, there were a few comments. Maybe you can mention a few things on the way forward.
Thank you very much. And let me start by the comments that were made by the Honorable CS. It is exactly right that we have challenges in terms of personnel and budget. And one of the actual key asks that I was going to make, now that I have the time, is we do require first at the ministerial level support for this digital transformation committee in exactly those areas. And I think communication has already gone to the various PSs who are present here. So requesting, first of all, that certain nominations that have been asked of personnel who have been key to the work we've been doing to actually sit now formally in the committees so that we can begin the work. And those committees have clear terms of reference addressing each of the areas which we are highlighting here. One of the first things they will do is to harmonize the work going in that area and then develop work plans and resource mobilize. So I think, Bonasies, your comment was very timely. And we're waiting for those appointments to be done so that we can kick off that meeting. Also, in terms of the support to that committee, it was right what Bonakasia said in terms of development partners and private sector. Once those committees are in place and they define the work properly, then an engagement with those other parties, I think, can be done much, much better, because then the money and the skill sets can be funded or pushed directly. We have had development partners who've offered to provide consultants who have certain skill sets that can help. But without a framework, then it's difficult to maximize on that support. So this Digital Transformation Committee is key. And as His Excellency Nyoro was asking also, we want to see how this then cascades to the counties so that we have a unified way, a centralized coordinated plan for executing on this. Going back to the issue of data and statistics, again, it's good to see that this issue is always highlighted, and it's really important. To answer what Madam Zoma was proposing and raising, and also to perhaps craft this resolution or move us in the direction of this resolution, I want to propose that to this sitting, perhaps we could look at a resolution that says a commitment is made to a harmonized, comprehensive, and continuous farmer registration and sourcing of related agricultural statistics in collaboration with the national government, development partners, and the private sector. I think that sort of like covers everything, because if it's continuous and it's harmonized and is in collaboration, then that covers the issues of making sure we have good data on an ongoing basis. And just to mention the Kiamis platform, which FAO has helped to pilot in 2 counties, one of the key things there is we have a harmonized farmer registration form, which was done in collaboration with all state departments. So it covers crops, it covers livestock, it covers fisheries, it has cooperative issues, and it has a few other indicators of socio-economic importance. That was done with the technical officers and has been standardized, and that's what's inside Kiamis, which has a farmer registration tool. And that tool is being provided free of charge to the counties, so it's up to us now to act on these benevolent measures. Thank you very much.
Can you pick up any other speakers? Maybe one issue or two?
Yep, thank you. I just want to pick up on the issue of digitization. Actually, my point will be very simple. To have all these sorted out so that we make some steps in this area, we got to make up our mind. One, to guide the development partners on where to put their resources. And that would be what platform, and let's make that decision without, mingling, because I know there are several proposals that get to the desk of the ministry, ATO. We got to really be clear to the development partners. This is the platform. And then the second point is to rally on a very clear coordination mechanism. This is what we need. I think Kiamis, which we support, was already presented in one of the Council of Governors conference, signed by governors by that time that they were already there. The ministry took up this, and that's how FAO came in. We already have tools, actually, including equipment that we're using for this data collection. And I think that's already a step forward that we should build on. Over.
I think that will bring us to the end. I believe the Secretariat, you have some response to make?
Yeah, thank you. I think I just have 2 comments. I think the CS mentioned it about this prioritization of the budget allocation. I think I would really want to stress, so far I think the warehousing receipts, it's at least a system that we have adopted at the regional economic bloc level, and that conversation has gone well. Like I said earlier, the food systems dialogue, we manage it at that level. I think my ask, to the CS and the governors is, there is the regional economic bloc's policy, which is stuck out there. And it actually lays out this enhancement or coordination. And it may be that I think the agriculture sector could be the tip of this, where it could help tip it. So I think that policy needs to be to come to life, possibly before this election. And then secondly, we could start it off right now. We have our sector working groups here for Jumuiya ya Kaunti za Pwani, where all the CCs come in, all the economists come in to sit down. We could do this beginning now, where we could talk about the budget, but we could also talk about the priorities and the policies. Thank you.
Thanks for the additional comments. Secretariat, I guess you've taken up the recommendations. We look forward to seeing some of that in our resolution for this meeting. Thank you, the speaker. Private sector, you have very elaborate issues for engagement with us and the CS here. Very clear. Do you think you want to add?
Not really on that, but I just wanted to mention that as private sector, we are ready. We are ready to work with the partners. Our theme is actually on partnership, so we are very much ready. And our recommendation is, let's come up with a coordination mechanism that works for all of us and the specific timelines within which we must implement this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we applaud the speakers? And thank you very much for your time. And could you circulate any presentations that you had? Back to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a good rapporteuring of that session. If we can give him a round of applause, and the speakers as well. So at this juncture, I know we're a little bit behind time, and our co-chairs would just like to give a quick brief on their aspirations of the sector as we finalize the resolutions. They're currently in the works. So I'll ask Cass Omoaka to invite our two co-chairs, and then we'll close out.
Honorable CS, the chair for the Agriculture Committee, Governors present, my colleague Cass, PSS around. Good afternoon. Mine is very brief. We have come to the tail end, and as the Secretariat finalize, we want to get comments from the two co-chairs. I'll start with Governor Nyoro, and I think we should bring yeah, or you want to talk from there? And then so. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, you should come here. Karibu.
Thank you very much, and let me start by thanking all the participants, including those who have been participating virtually, because it's very rare that you start a meeting and on the second day you still have the hall full. It shows the interest that we have in this discussion. So I want to thank you for your patience, and I know some of us have been speaking too much. I also want to thank you for listening. I think as we gathered here, the theme of this fourth Intergovernmental Agriculture Forum has been strengthening the intergovernmental relations. And it is on that basis that all the other issues that we have discussed will be addressed and will be achieved. And I want to say that it is quite clear from the discussions that we've had that going forward, we shall be able to have closer collaboration. I don't have that to be repeated. I really do not want that repeated. So I think it's quite clear that we are going to have closer collaboration, cooperation, consultation, and partnership. And it was very, very clear from yesterday that it is not only, which we always talk about, the trodden path, the closer collaboration between the national government and the county government. Yes, that is necessary, and we need to sharpen that. In fact, I think the most important thing is for us to agree that going forward, because there are certain areas that are still under, under consideration and still working, that we are going to enhance our collaboration, particularly in terms of some of the bills that are coming up that may have effect on the county governments, that we are going to consult further. I am expecting that after this we will discuss with the CS so that we can agree on what to do on those two coffee bills. There is a coffee bill in the National Assembly that also we have concerns about, but there is also a coffee bill at the Senate. How you have two coffee bills which cannot be merged is an issue of concern. So what I'm giving that as an example, that going forward, anything that happens in the sector will be done in a consultative manner. I also want to say, and today I received quite a number of calls from my colleague governors on the aspect of the Tea Act. Now that is already a legislation, it's already an act. Now we feel aggrieved by that act because it takes responsibilities of the county governments and puts it to another organization, which is under the national government. We feel very, very aggrieved on that. Now the problem is, it has been implemented because as late as last week, the directors were appointed. Now, we as a county, we have restrained ourselves, as COG, we have restrained ourselves from going to court because we did not want to do that. But when we ask ourselves, what is the other way out? Now, this has to go back to, we have to agree first. Then if we agree, that has to go back to the National Assembly. We know the status of the National Assembly at this point. Now, we may not have much choice. We may probably have to go to court. Do we have to do that when two of us are seated here? It is something that we need to consider. So I'm emphasizing that it is not only the two levels of government, the national and the county government, that needs to collaborate further, including all the issues that we have talked about, data, all the issues that we have talked about, housing, all the issues that we've talked about, but also it is important where the CS sits to ensure that there is further collaboration and coordination within the national government. I have to say that the first Intergovernmental Agriculture Forum that we formed, there were more involvement in other ministries. The Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, and all of that. I think we are seeing that diminishing somehow because people are busy, but we are urging the national government, particularly the CS, to make sure that that level of coordination is maintained. We, on our part, also need to coordinate further. We need to coordinate with the private sector we've had. We need to coordinate more with farmer organizations. We need to coordinate. So I think the bottom line is that coordination is not just about between us and the national government, but also across us and within us, so that we can have a harmonized and well-articulated agricultural development program and strategy. I think that is the first thing to say in my closing remark. The second thing to say is that there are certain things that we have observed in this meeting. things which are of immediate concern to our farmers. And if we sit here and live here without making clear recommendations on the way forward, they may think that we are just having another meeting in Mombasa. We have talked about the competitiveness of our agriculture sector. We have talked about high cost of inputs. That has been accelerated or exacerbated by taxation of agricultural, inputs and, implements. Now, we have to leave this place saying that it is important for the national government to consider that agriculture is not a social sector. Agriculture is an investment sector. And therefore, the returns to what the agriculture is bringing is more than you can get from taxation. So we have to sit here and say the government needs to reconsider some of those taxation. The government needs to address the issue of high cost of fertilizer. It is not just caused by taxation, but we have all talked about even farmers could not adopt when the cost was lower. What is it going to be at this point, even as we implement the e-vouchers? The cost of animal feeds, and we know the importance of dairy and so on. And I'm happy that there are certain things that we've talked about which the CS is doing, including, and we have to make it very clear here, that we are supporting the government on the importation of GM feed-related inputs, so that we bring down the cost of animal feeds. We have to talk about the problems of animal diseases. In my own county, one farmer has lost 1 million shillings because of livestock movement and effects of those diseases. Now we have to clearly say that as a country, we have to talk about livestock movement. We are not limiting it, but we have to put in conditions on which livestock moves from one county to another. We used to have that during the district, when we have districts, and we are urging the national government, and we are also talking to the Ministry of Interior to make sure that we are not stopping people from moving, but we have to move livestock under particular conditions, and that needs to be spelled out. The counties also need, and it's good we are talking about regional blocks, the counties also need to come up with inter-county disease surveillance and management systems. Because it's pointless for Kiambu to have disease management system and have vaccines, and the next county does not. So these are issues that if we don't talk about them now and say that our agriculture sector is suffering and those issues need to be looked at, I think we can have the intergovernmental coordination and cooperation and whatever, but if we don't address those individual issues that are making our agriculture sector look archaic, I heard a word here, Byzantine, I think it's something that we need to consider. And then my final one is we have looked at the sector and we have said that we can be able to do all these things. We can try and reduce or even reduce to a large extent the input prices. We can do animal disease control. We can try and make our agriculture competitive. We can increase extension. We can do all of those things. But what we are saying is those are what we can call necessary, but not sufficient conditions to make agricultural transformation in this country. It is very, very worrying, the kind of trends that were presented yesterday, that our importations are going up as our exports are coming down. It is very, very worrying that agriculture productivity is increasing, and we want to thank the CS because for the period he has been here, we can now start to see signs of benefits and starting to see, like for instance, rice. We saw that, dairy. But the movement is so slow that we need to accelerate it. So we all said that our agriculture sector is sick. And the way to fix this is to have a total radical change, a transformational rethinking of our agriculture sector, if it is going to meet the demands of Kenyan population over the next 5-10 years. And we say the opportunity is now. when we are thinking about a transitional government, we thank His Excellency the President for the effort that, through the CS, we have seen, because as we saw those trends, we saw some of them starting to increase. But we are saying that they have to increase at a faster rate. So that transformation and all the things that we have agreed on must have a time-limit implementation period, including putting more money into agriculture, including the counties putting more money into agriculture. That transformation is for us as a country to consider and move it forward for the future of our country and for the future of our children. I want to stop at that point because we'll be making a communique, we'll be reading the resolutions from this meeting. But thank you very much. I really want to appreciate you. And over to you, CS.
Thank you very much, Governor Nyoro, for those very pertinent remarks, emphasizing the value of this meeting that has helped us clarify what needs to be done to change and transform our agriculture sector. I want to join you also in thanking all the participants and the presenters for the quality of the presentations that were made. I think this was a great conference. But as you have pointed out, the key thing is what we do after this. Because we can make great resolutions here, point out where the challenges are and point out ways of dealing with them, but until we take the steps of implementing what we have recommended, we may come back here again and find out that we are here, we are where we were when we came for the conference. So the critical thing really is taking that step of moving forward with implementation of the recommendations and not making it very well coordinated, because we are acting at different levels. We are acting at the county, we are also acting at the national level, we are also acting at the regional level, and we have very many actors. Agriculture is also very wide and complex. The challenges are very many. So that coordination and the collaboration becomes very important for us to be able to move forward. And let me say on behalf of the national government that we are always ready and willing to work very closely, as we have done, actually, with the county governments. Because even though we are in charge of coordination and policy at the national level, action takes place. Farming is done at the local level, at the county level. There will always be bound to be challenges here and there, even in policy making. Sometimes it's not that clear. So there will always be pull and push, but the most important thing is, as long as we are able to sit down and address those challenges and agree on how to address them, then we keep moving forward. The issue of the Tea Act, for example, and the coffee bill, all we need to do is set up a team that looks at it and tells us what exactly is the problem, instead of us talking about it all the time. Can we have the teams, the C&G legal team and our legal team sit down? What exactly is the problem with the Tea Bill and the Tea Act? And then when we agree, we recommend the amendments. Because I believe legislation keeps improving, we keep improving it. We keep improving. You can see even the Constitution now is trying to see how to improve it. So even the bills, we improve them. So I think, without spending too much time on that one, let us have the teams. Our legal team in the ministry, led by Wachira Maina, and the C&G team, set out a time where you sit down and review the tea bill and the coffee bill,
and recommend legislation. The coffee bill is not yet law, so the recommendations can be made at this point in time. It's still going through the process in Parliament. Now, there are 2 bills in Parliament. So that makes it even more complicated. So which one do you amend? Even when you make the recommendations, which one do you? Maybe it might require us to wait. We do our own and wait to see eventually what product comes out. Then we recommend amendments. But there are 2 bills. One originated from the senator of Embu, which was taken through the Senate. And then ours that we took through public participation, talked to farmers and took it there. We wait and probably wait, but the legal teams will also advise us on how to proceed given that untidy situation. For the tea bill, it is already law, but many of the provisions were also challenged in court. So even as they look at it, then there are other areas they can't also touch because the court injuncted. There are certain provisions within the tea bill that were injuncted by the court that are part of the court process. And it's also important to also remember the tea bill did not originate from the ministry. The tea bill was a private member's bill. We only recommended amendments to it. It was not sponsored by the ministry. The ministry filed a bill already in Parliament, and because we had particular issues we wanted to deal with, particular challenges with the tea farming that we wanted to do, we recommended amendments. Governor, that's what we did. We can together again recommend amendments. There is absolutely no problem. But I was explaining there is that problem also of courts, certain provisions already frozen by the courts. What we have done is, because you also can't have a lacuna, it's a sector that is alive. It can't stay in a freezer. The board that has been appointed were boards elected by the farmers, directly elected by the farmers themselves. That's what the Tea Act provides for. So it's not people picked by the ministry. It is people who were picked by the farmers themselves, farmers in their factories, elected delegates. The delegates sat and they picked directors of the coffee board. The only person that the ministry will pick, and not the ministry, is actually the president, the chair of the board. Now, that also, if we can also again review it and look at what can be done. If there is any infringement on any particular function for the county, it can also be reviewed and addressed. Critical importance, of course, is that, as co-chair you have said, farming is business. And it's people who have invested in that business. The most important thing is to ensure that that person who has invested in that business, the farmer, the primary player in the sector, improves his livelihood. And I think whatever other challenges the bill may have, it has supported us in assisting deal with the market to provide, make sure farmers earn money. I think that's extremely important. Now, other issues really can be addressed, and I don't think there is any major issue there. We can address them moving forward. I also want to join you, Co-Chair, in pointing out that this meeting was great in terms of helping understand priorities, our peak priorities, because we cannot also do everything, intervene in everything. We have been able to identify priorities that we will redirect our resources and our energy and time in dealing with. And I hope the resolutions really capture them. And we were saying with you when we were sitting there, we are not interested in processes and structures. We want the resolution to be pointed in terms of picking the key priorities we have been identifying as we were discussing for the last 2 days. Those key priorities that we keep repeating. And many of those priorities are actually cross-cutting, and they require both levels of government to be aligned for us to address them. Like the one you have emphasized on transboundary diseases, that is making our livestock unproductive, that is making us unable to produce enough milk to support the market. The big market for milk, we can't produce enough because of the gaps in vaccination. We are supposed to coordinate that at the national level, but counties are the ones that are supposed to do vaccinations and reach the levels that is required. I think that's a priority we must address. One county is vaccinating here, another one is not doing. Foot and mouth diseases keep coming, then we sometimes even blame the quality of the vaccine, and when we go to look at it, we realize not the quality of the vaccine, it is the level of vaccination that we've not reached because our priorities are not aligned. That we must address. The issue of movement of livestock, we must address, because if they keep moving and moving diseases everywhere, then how do we improve the productivity and value to the farmers? I mean, the livestock that is supporting our livelihoods, we need to address that. And as you said, it's not that they shouldn't move, but they should move in a way that we are able to know. If you are moving your livestock from this county to the next, is this livestock vaccinated? Are you transferring diseases from this region to another? How do we control that movement so that we don't spread the diseases everywhere? Obviously, markets are spread everywhere, and we must take our livestock to those markets. But there must be a way of organizing that system to make sure that we don't spread diseases. The issue of digitization, I don't want to go back there again, but I'm obsessed with it because I can clearly see the transformation it will bring in how how the change it will bring in our agriculture sector if we do it right. And the related issue of data, gathering of data and use of data and all that. We already agreed on Kiamis. Why should we go and set up another system when we already have one? Paid for, it is there. We have been allowed to use it and to own it. Why should we start looking for these platforms? Cost money, and we have a problem of money. So why would we, unless our priorities are not right? So it was already agreed, and I'm happy it was also agreed with at the Council of Governors level. Even in the ministry, we have agreed. We improve on what we have. Instead of trying to start a completely new thing, let's improve already on what we have. And then look at the priorities in terms of resources. We resource it properly. We implement, coordinate properly, we move forward on that agenda. I don't want to repeat on all the priorities. We really outlined them very well. I think yesterday we explained to them, people interacted on them. Let's capture the priorities, the key priorities, because we also can't do everything. We can't do everything. We must do the things that we know are key in bringing the transformation that we require. So I really want to end there. I'm told the team is not ready. We probably need to take a break for lunch, come back just to listen to the resolutions and adoption so that we save on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. So we shall go for lunch for a period of 40 minutes, and by 2:30, we just come in for 15 minutes to read the resolutions, adopt them, and then we can now travel. So enjoy your lunch.